Welcome everyone to this week's episode of VGN Weekly. This is where we will recap all VGN broadcasted events right here. We will also have in-depth interviews from your favorite drivers, sponsors, and league owners, and so much more. So please subscribe and like us. Don't forget to ring the bell or click the bell so you are notified anytime we have VGN content dropping. Also, if you are a league owner and you have a broadcast need, please look us up at virtualgrip.net. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. This week's guest will be a driver that is definitely on a hot streak. He's won 3 in a row in the SK Modifieds. It's Arizona's Steven Spies, but before we talk to him, we need to recap all the broadcasted action on VGN this past week. The Bootleg Racing League was in action in Nashville, Tennessee. The first race on Saturday was the SK Modifieds that would see yours truly lead the field a green flag, but would see a fierce battle from about fourth on back that would pit a lot of guys, a lot of moving around on a wicked fast track. The leaders would, inch away early on while all that battling was going on. One of those drivers was the aforementioned Steven Spies. He came in on a 2-race win streak. He started 13th and almost from the beginning started moving forward through the field. The race itself would actually go caution-free for the first 77 laps. Once that caution flew, that meant the lead that both first and second place had built, which was over about 2.5-3 seconds, was gone in a flash. On that restart, though, Steven Spies would restart third in dispatch of Kurt Smith, who was running second. And from there, he would set his sights on my number 71, and that jump back out in the lead after the restart. This would, the last lap would see quite the battle, I guess, depending on your point of view. But they would see a textbook duel between both Steven and I that would see Steven nip me at the line for his 3rd win in a row. Rounding out the top 5 were Jeffrey Harden, Adam Shane, and Donnie Moore. But more interesting, with the results of this race, the top 4 in points are separated by just 4 points, leaving Nashville. So Todd Liston is leading the way on that. So the second half of the season coming right down to the wire, you guys are going to see a heck of a battle for the points there in those SK Modifieds. The next race of the evening, of course, was the late model stocks. Once again, yours truly got to lead the field to the green flag, but it wouldn't take long for Todd Liston to grab the lead, and he'd bring Joseph Snyder along with him to take over second place, it would drop me back to third. But the race would see a few more cautions than the SKs did. A big reason of that, if you're watching the broadcast, those late models were a lot more loose on corner exit than what those modifieds were. You had to be really careful with where you got back in on the throttle, and it turned out to bite a lot of guys throughout that race there, causing a lot of calamity, I guess, around turn 4. The cautions would, though, keep the field pretty tight throughout the race, provide some great racing again from about that 3rd, 4th position on back. That would help guys, especially like Adam Shane and Mike, not Matt Holloway, to make it through the field. Kurt Smith and I would also set up a battle towards the end there after one of those late race cautions. We would get some contact between the two of us that would actually bring out the final caution that would set up a green-white checkered, and you go on to see Adam Shane, I think, collect his first late model race, if I know on the season, if not the first one ever. So it's good to see him grab a win there with Smith second, Holloway third, and I think you came home in 5th in that. Todd Liston will continue to lead the points by John Wilson by 3 points. So another tight battle over there in the late models. Next up, our conversation, though, will be with Steven Spies. But first, we need to take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side.
This is your chance to get behind the wheel. the opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
Welcome back, and as promised, we do have the back-to-back-to-back three-peat winner here of the SK Modifieds. We're going to welcome in Steven Spies. And Steven, before we get going, most everybody's used to seeing folks on camera. Real quick, we just want to say sorry for the technical difficulties. Arizona internet is not up to snuff right now. Would that be an accurate way to put it?
Very accurate. As discussed, I really miss my my Google Fiber back in KC right now.
Well, I tell you what, we'll get through this here, and maybe we'll have to bring you back on so everybody can see that ugly mug of yours.
There should be. I believe Ryan got a big ugly picture, so that should do.
All right. Well, I tell you what, we're all here in, comment thread, and I ask everybody this because I'm always interested. How did you find, tell me your journey through sim racing? Did you start on console? When did you start on iRacing?
So I would say I started, as far as sim racing goes, if you can call it sim racing, let's go back to the Atari 2600, which I'm sure you and I are familiar with. Half the other people probably have never heard of it because they're not as old as us. But I had the Indy 500 game way back then. You could use the little paddles that you used for like Pong and stuff on it. And honestly, I would sit forever. There was an ice track that was an oval, and I would just go around and around pretending it was dirt. So that's probably where I got started, honestly. And then stayed in video games all through, growing up. I've always liked all kinds of video games of different genres, but always, of course, partial to racing. And along with that, kind of our weekend activity growing up, my dad was a big dirt race fan, so we were at a track almost every weekend watching racing. My Hot Wheels were like my fun thing to do at home. I was always making dirt tracks, and I kept like lists and scheduled heats and did races and did the whole thing. So just racing has just always been kind of my main interest. Went through the Papyrus stuff and kind of did. I've never been a huge NASCAR fan, but did play those games. Went and played the Sprint Car World of Outlaws games on PC and PlayStation, and have just always kept with it all along the way, and eventually got into a real car for 3 or 4 years, and then got back out of that and found my way to iRacing at that point.
Now, how long have you been involved in iRacing? Better yet, let me ask you: was dirt here? Did dirt bring you in, or did you just bring in because it was a racing game?
Really, just because. By the way, it's a simulation, not a game, John. But
send the hate mail to Ryan Seneker.
Agreed. I always give John trouble about that for everybody listening. So he calls it a game. So every time I hear it, I've got to correct him because I know he loves it. But once I got out of the real car, I needed something to kind of scratch that competitive itch still. I think there was rumors of dirt, but it hadn't been announced quite yet. But it was not long before they announced dirt. I think maybe I joined up in like the December, January, and because I think it was dirt that they announced on an April Fool's Day, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I joined up just in that December, January before that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'll never forget that April, because who was, I don't know if it was Steve Myers, but one of them was like tasting the dirt. Funniest thing ever. But I don't remember the year it was and whatnot. And you've kind of found a home here in BRL, and can you tell us a little bit about how you found your way to BRL here?
Yeah, whenever I was, I really had gotten into the dirt once it did come out. That's pretty much where I spent all of my time, and found some leagues to run in, and of course, that's where you and I ran across
Yeah,
each other. I believe it was in the Stars on Dirt League,
correct.
and started racing together and racing with a group of guys, and so at that point, I believe you started saying, "Hey, there's this. I know it's pavement, but there's this league. You really should give it a try." And I kept saying, "It's pavement. I'm not really interested. No, not interested. No, it's pavement. I don't want to do it." But eventually, had weekends open and gave it a go, and I've just really found it to be a good kind of nice community place to come and race.
It is, and yeah, talk about it. But it's asphalt now. Here are three runs in a row. I think I said in my interview last night that you're starting to lose your dirt cred, just so you know. So,
I'm
um,
pretty sure I beat you recently on dirt too, haven't I?
well, every now and then I got to let you win, just to keep your. I don't want you feeling bad about yourself,
I
but
appreciate that.
you're very welcome. But you go back to the story of where you got in. You said your dad took you to tracks and stuff like that, and that's such a familiar story. For I mean, most all of us, are following a family member or a father or whatever the case might be, to racetracks. And which racetracks did you grow up going around to?
Yeah, growing up here in the Kansas City, well, there. I guess I'm not there right now, so I have to say there in the Kansas
No,
City area.
you left me. You left me, so that's fine. You didn't want to hang out at tracks
Yes.
anymore.
No, no, absolutely. I had to get as far away as possible. But
Understand?
so we went to Lakeside Speedway, which is not in the same location. It still exists today, but in a slightly different location. So we went there for many years. There was a little track that doesn't exist anymore, Riverside Stadium, which was a little tiny quarter mile, but it was the best because they had a figure eight. So as a little, kid at 7, 8, 10 years old, figure eight was like the highlight of the night. Mud splash and cars crashing into each other. It was fabulous. So those are the two main ones. There's Central Missouri Speedway in Warrensburg, which is about half an hour from where I lived. We started going there maybe once I got a little older. It kind of started picking up pace and having good races. I-70 Speedway, which just came back in the last couple of years, went there, both pavement and dirt. And then whenever I actually raced, there's a Valley Speedway in Grand Valley, Missouri, is where I did most of my racing. So we went to tracks all over the region, but those are the main ones that we went on a weekly basis. Would have been the Lakeside and Riverside growing up.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, if you guys know the name Clint Boyer, Lakeside is where Clint actually got his start out of. So some history there, and then of course I-70 you mentioned. There's a lot of history there. I think they brought the NASCAR trucks in there at one point, and back
Yeah.
in my day when I was in a car, we went up there and ran NDRA races, which at the time NDRA was kind of like what your Lucas Oil and World of Outlaws is now, and that was my very first big dirt event that I ever went to. Was up there at I-70. So very, very cool track, a lot of history. Um, you know, did you have a favorite car? I mean, you talk about the figure eights, but did you have like a car that, or a series that when they came to town or when you went to the track, you couldn't wait for?
Whenever I was young and going with my dad, late models were the big thing. At Lakeside, you had all kinds of late models coming in from all over. A name that some of the Midwesterners will be familiar with, Joe Kosiski and his
Yep.
brothers would come down to
Joe and
Lakeside on a weekly
Joe and
basis.
Joe and Steve
Steve
and
and Ed, yeah.
Ed. Yep. Yep.
And Joe was actually a NASCAR, I think multiple time even national champion.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
was the biggest thing
He he
growing
and
up.
he and Larry Phillips ran the roost with those dirt NASCAR races.
Yeah, Larry Phillips really didn't run at the dirt tracks around KC. Once Lakeside moved locations and they rebuilt it as pavement, and at that time I-70 also was pavement, and Larry would come in and just blow everybody away. Even Clint, whenever Clint Boyer started racing pavement around here, Larry would even blow him away.
Well,
I think the only person I saw
Larry, in
beat
my
him.
opinion, is probably the best race car driver, oval race car driver that I've
Without
ever
a
seen.
doubt, without a doubt. I think honestly, the only person I saw keep up with him was Tony Roper.
Yeah.
who made it to truck level and unfortunately lost his life in a race. But
Yep.
so those are, it was awesome seeing some of those guys and getting to watch Clint Boyer, on the dirt racing a modified and then moving his way over to pavement and moving up. It was, you could tell he was going somewhere if he wanted to racing, because he made guys that raced for years and won tons of races. He just made them look slow around here. It's just, it was kind of like watching Kyle Larson come in, whenever he goes into series and just blows everybody away. That's what Clint was doing locally.
Yeah, and I always liked the story that Clint told about when Richard Childress called him to ask him if he wanted to drive. Clint didn't think it was him, and he hung up on him the first time. So
Yeah,
that's always one of my favorite racing stories.
Yeah, I think he was working at like a body shop at a dealership or something, and they pulled him away to say, "Hey, you got a phone call." And yeah, you're right, he hung up on him. So it was, it's a great story.
It really is. And well, you talk about the Kazuskis and all that. I have to assume then those were your hero. Your when you were growing up, the guys that, okay, that's my guy.
For the most part. So my dad kind of knew a good number of guys that raced. He, for a while, I think, whenever he was a little younger, jumped on some pit crews, but he likes to tell the story. He was kind of kicked off some pit crews because the guys told him he enjoyed watching the races too much. He wasn't worth the darn in the pits because he was too busy watching. So most of the time we were on the wrong side of the fence, if you will. But there was a couple of local guys that my dad knew that raced, so we were around them quite a bit, just outside the track, and got to go sit in the cars and do all that fun stuff when you're a little kid. So some local guys were kind of who I really was rooting for the most part.
Well, now that you've gotten a little older and your racing horizons have expanded a little bit, is there something that you kind of pay really close attention to here now and today? I know that there's so many different streaming options. So I know, I don't think you got a whole lot of dirt tracks around you where you're at now. So what do you follow now? What I'm getting at.
I spend my time trying to find all the USAC non-wing sprint races and USAC midget races. I think that's the best racing that's out there right now from a spectator standpoint. I mean, you want nerves of steel, and I don't know how those guys race those cars. I'd be scared to death of them. But the racing's close. It's tight. It's good racing, and we're kind of finishing up Indiana Sprint Week on Flow right now. So I've been catching those all week. But I think the best race, probably the past 2-3 years, has been the BC 39 midget race at Indy. So that's probably what I follow closest. But if there's racing on, then I've probably got it on TV, whatever it is.
You have a driver? Yeah, anybody you pull for? But yeah, who do you like to see win, and who do you like to see lose?
I don't really have any particular favorites whenever it comes to USAC stuff. I've kind of been watching it closely the last few years. There's the guys that are always running up front, your Brady Bacons and Justin Grants. Logan Seavey's come on huge this year. So I just like watching good racing at this point. I don't really have a driver that I'm really pulling for. If I'm watching late models, I kind of pull for Jonathan Davenport. I know he's up and down. I like seeing Ricky Thornton Jr. do good. I saw him, years ago in a modified and watched him at the Boone Super Nationals and stuff like that. So I kind of like watching Ricky do good, and especially with his ups and downs this year, with his ride and coming back and still being great. It just shows the talent. And at this point, I really just appreciate talent. And like I said, good, entertaining racing.
Well, speaking of the Boone Nationals, and that's such a unique event. Is there a race that you've been to personally? Is there one that stands out, one event?
I don't know. Maybe I had a guy invite me to go see SRX in St. Louis once. Maybe I should mention that one before I get in trouble. But I think.
Hey, you know what? The most entertaining part of that night, other than the fact it was 140 degrees that day, was the drunk guy. you got to admit the drunk guy stole the show.
I mean, that's every night at a dirt track, if we're being honest, isn't it? Though, I think it
True.
also was nice that you found a new route to the track, so it was like an educational night. I think it was great. But as far as events, I would say going to Boone is something that if you're just a racing fan, I mean, if you want like the number of races and number of laps per dollar that you spend, Boone IMCA Super Nationals is the place. I haven't gone up there for the full week that they do, but we've gone up for the Friday and Saturday shows where they're kind of doing the last qualifying and all of the features on Saturday nights. And it's just a great show. I mean, they've got it down there and they farm the track every so many races, and it's just a great experience.
Well, real quick, explain for the folks that are watching and may not know what those are, because it's an event unlike any other.
Yeah, so basically you take all of the main IMCA classes. So I think they've got the A mods and the sport mods and the I don't even know what the right way to call them. It's like the two levels of kind of the hobby stocks and the street stocks that they have. There's two different levels. But guys come from, or race teams, we shouldn't just say guys, come from all over the country and they race all week long. So, they may have a few hundred, if not up to 1,000 cars that race there throughout that week. So, you're kind of fighting against a couple of hundred other drivers to make that final show. And then in the final shows on Saturday night, they start, I think it's 10 or 11 rows, 3 wide. So you've got 30 or 33 cars, and I mean, it's not a real big track. It's really tight, kind of paperclip corners, and it puts on just some fabulous racing.
Not a lot
the
of
best
banking.
from everywhere. There actually is a lot of banking. At
Really?
Boone. It's pretty
It doesn't
steep.
look really.
No,
It doesn't look like that on TV or on TV. I guess when
yeah,
I stream them.
it's
Really?
it's pretty high up there once you start walking up those banks. But yeah, it's just a great show because you've got the top drivers from everywhere, all over the nation in different areas, all coming in and racing, and it's just race after race after race after race. But it's a great time. I highly recommend it.
Well, very cool. Well, we've talked about iRacing and everything else. Your kind of your journey to the BRL and stuff like that. But outside of a BRL, where can we find you on track and iRacing? Is there anything else that you're interested in, or between cars, series, other things like that?
Yep, of course, as you know, I mean, I'll race anything. I race almost anything on iRacing. I enjoy doing the rallycross. I like doing dirt racing, obviously. I honestly don't do a whole lot of pavement racing. Outside of BRL, I rarely will get in a pavement oval car, but occasionally I'll jump in something if it's at a track I just happen to know and feel like I can get in a race at. And I do really love road racing. I've always been a road race fan. I haven't, growing up, I wasn't really exposed to it, but was always kind of fascinated by sports cars. Big Porsche fan. That's kind of my go-to, even though we don't drive them a lot on iRacing. They're maybe above our skill level, I think, for our little gambler group. But we spend time doing endurance races. I'll just jump in and do a Mazda race. Actually, yesterday I did a Toyota GR86 fixed race. It was at I think Okoyama, which is a track I've got a lot of laps on, and jumped in cold, got third place in my split. So I just, you name it, I'll just go jump in and race it.
Do you have a favorite car?
I don't know.
Dirt, asphalt, midget,
Yeah, I
sports
think
car.
Yeah, I think that I think I've told you before. I think that the old Radical is probably one of the best cars for road racing on iRacing. I really, really enjoyed that. I've kind of gotten into the F4 car because it's not too fast. I can pretty much jump in and race, and I'm probably not going to win, but I can be competitive in the splits that I get put in. So those are probably what I race the most. Obviously, if we get into dirt, midgets and non-wing 360s are my go-tos. Not a lot of places that I find that we get to race them, but I jump in and have been trying to dig and find leagues whenever I can. I tend to do well in the late model, but give me those non-wing cars.
Well, I know one of the things you spoke of road racing and that, and obviously I know, and I always like talking about this because I think it's one of the coolest things in iRacing. We've gotten to do a lot of team events and done a lot of the long endurance races, include the 24. Is there a favorite endurance race that you've done so far?
What did we just did well in something? Was that Daytona or was that something else?
No, Spa. We just did okay at Spa.
Spa. That's right. So I guess that's my
Daytona
favorite
was
one.
way back, dude. Daytona was way back in January, man. I think we've done
And
5 or 6 since then.
I think that's maybe like a good segue to talk about iRacing. Like, I don't remember. I get in the car, I race, I have fun, I just enjoy it as a hobby. I don't take it real seriously. I get in, I want to win, I want to do well, right? Why race unless you're trying to get out there and win? But it's not like my life. It's not my personality or anything. It's just fun. And I think you've even said it on this podcast a couple of times, right? It gives you some of that camaraderie that you kind of
Yes.
miss from the real track, right? So
Yeah.
we've got our group, obviously, you and me and Zach and Jeff Kemper and Aiden and Connor, et cetera, and guys that come and go from our gambler group. And it's just a good time. We kind of banter throughout the week back and forth with messages and things like that. We get together when we can and race. And it's just a good social thing, especially, I think it did a great job of kind of carrying through the pandemic times, right? It gave us
Oh
that
yeah.
socializing and things that we needed. And so to me, it's just a fun thing to do. I enjoy it. I enjoy the people. That's why I'm in BRL. I enjoy the people of BRL. Hopefully, after last night, you and others don't dislike me because it's not that serious to me. I'm not out there trying to crash anybody. I'm not win or leave and take my ball and go home. But I'm gonna push. I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna try to win. To me, it's a fun challenge to figure out how to make the car do what I need it to do. Change what I'm doing from lap to lap in the race to try to figure out what you need to do to get it. That's the fun challenge to me.
Yeah, and you talked about last night. We had contact during that last lap, and you know what? I wish I could send that as a training video because racing like that on the last lap. You didn't wreck me, and I didn't wreck you. We had contact, just trying to push each other to try to gain an advantage and whatnot. And we weren't doing that on lap 20. We weren't doing that on lap 5. That's one thing that I think a lot of folks need to understand, that when you're going for a win, just wrecking somebody is never cool. But also racing like that, midway through a race, it's not necessarily cool either, and that's not something you'd have done.
No,
So from
absolutely. And
my standpoint, yeah, no ill will there at all from last night. So
yeah, I think that if anybody goes back, you can't see it. You need different angles, right? But I
yeah,
think if you look at it from like a chase view on the replay or whatever, it was two guys racing hard, trying to go through the same place, right? I was trying to keep momentum on the bottom. I was cognizant that you were outside me. I'm trying to leave you a full lane on the outside, but not more than a full lane.
nope.
And you're trying to kind of make sure I can't swing out wide, and sometimes somebody gives up. You and I aren't those two people that aren't going to give up. We're
Well,
going to
and
keep driving through it.
part of our issue is, who do you hate losing to?
That would be John Hine.
Yeah, who do I hate losing to? Steven Spies. So
Yours truly,
yeah,
absolutely. Like I
so
said,
that's part of
we're
that.
not those
Yeah,
guys that are going to back out whenever we're next to each other. I think that we race respectfully. We don't crash each other, but we don't give each other room, and we know we can do that to each other
yep,
as well without ruining ours and everybody else's race.
that's
I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't ever overdrive a corner and slide up into somebody. I mean, that's racing. It happens, but it's not intentional. It's trying to, like I said, it's trying to see how you can push that car and get it to do what you need it to do. And sometimes you mess it up.
Oh, absolutely, and we've all been guilty of that. So, well, I tell you what, I'm going to move into, and I'm going to start doing this. So anybody watching this, and if you're a future guest, just know what I'm about to do is probably going to happen with you. Um,
Uh-oh.
yeah, this is why I wish your camera's working so I could see the look on your face. We're going to do word association. So when I say a word, something, only one, maybe 2 words. Don't go over 2 words. I want you to say the first thing that comes to mind. Ready?
We'll find out in a second.
All right. First one up. BRL.
Community.
Dirt.
Fun. Exciting.
St. Louis barbecue.
Make believe. Non-existent. Gross.
I don't know how we stay friends. Kansas City Chiefs.
I love it. Love it. If I had my camera on, you'd see the flag behind me. Good times. Happy.
That was not 2 words. You do not listen. And finally, losing races to me.
Nauseating.
I think that's probably a good place to stop with that. But very cool. Thank you for playing along here. And I want to kind of wrap things up with you here. Recently you've kind of touched on here earlier that you recently moved from Kansas City to Arizona. Job aside for a minute, what has that been like for you? Different climates, all kinds of things. Tell us how the move has been for you.
Hot for sure. The last couple of months, it's a dry heat, which does in fact make a difference. But 113 is just hot.
Does it? I was about to say, when it's 114, 15, 20, does it really make a difference?
It's just still hot. But no, I mean, overall, it's been good. So, it wasn't an expected or intended move. My company that I was working for in Kansas City laid off 20% of the workforce. I got caught up in that and just started looking for another job. All my wife's family's out here in the Phoenix area. So we had talked about moving out here at some point once our kids were grown. Both my kids are out of high school. One's out of college. The other's in college right now. So I was looking for jobs here and in Kansas City and wherever else for that matter. But
you missed out on Minneapolis by that far.
Oh, actually, farther north, Duluth, which I had an offer.
That's right.
Yeah, I had an offer in Duluth, but the wife said no.
I gotta ask. Every time you walk outside and it's 115, how often do you think of that job in Duluth?
Very, very often. If my wife says it's hot or something, I send her like a screenshot of the Weather Channel in Duluth where it's only 70 degrees. So we could have had this. But no, it's been good. She's getting to kind of reconnect with her sisters. We saw them fairly regularly anyway, but it's different. Now they can run out and go have lunch and do all those things. We lived in Kansas City by my family for 15 to 20 years, so it's time to be back by her. So it's been good, and I'll enjoy a couple of winters with no snow. I don't mind cold weather, but no snow through the winter is going to be nice. But we aren't close enough to dirt tracks. I will say that there's a couple around. I haven't gotten a chance to go check them out, but
you should
this
go to
fall
the Wild
I will.
You should actually. You got the Wild West Shootout that's in Casa Grande. I know that's a couple hours from you. That's what you should go do. You probably really enjoy that show. You got the big modified races out there with the late models, and so. But well, Stephen, I thank you for your time here and hopping on. It's been a fun conversation. It's kind of a glimpse of what it's like hanging out in the Gambler Channel, to be honest with you. But we do have a lot of fun there. But again, thank you for coming on here and sharing with us some of your viewpoints and. Good luck with the rest of the season. And are you real quick? You're like 3 points out of that modified. Are you gonna be able to make the rest of the races and push for the modified championship?
We'll see. I'm me. I'm not much of a points racer. If I'm there, great. If I can make it, I make it. But I just want to win races. Points are fine. They definitely show that you're there, that you're consistent, that you finish well, and which is not easy to do, right? I think in the beginning of the season in the SK, I had a week or two where got caught up in things, and that's just how it goes some weeks. And you got to race differently if you're racing for points, and do whatever you can to stay out of those things. And my goal is to get to the front. So, it's usually a kind of a last minute decision for me if we've got something going on or not. And being here in Phoenix, just finishing that thought out, I'm 3 hours different than East Coast right now. So that's been the biggest change here is trying to find places I can race that don't start at 4 p.m. during the week. So BRL still works well for me since it's on the weekend.
Oh, fair enough. If we can ever talk dirt, or Lowell going back to dirt on Friday, I'll make sure it's like at 5 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah, I was assured that we were coming on here for a special announcement. I feel like I got snickered a little bit. Unless we want to go ahead
Yeah,
and break the news of dirt coming back officially VRL
no,
sanctioned.
that ain't happening. Don't get me in any trouble. Don't make Lowell drive off a road or call me. None of that's on the horizon. So, but
Oh, makes me
thank
sad.
you and me both. But you know what, man? Thank you again. I really, really appreciate your time on here, like I said, and you know what? We got a little bit of business left to do here. We do got to look forward here to what's coming on VGN this week, and the BRL is going to go to Myrtle Beach this week. Saturday night's lineup is going to get started at 6:40 Eastern. With the SKs there, and Steven, you know, to kind of recap, Donnie Moore has got the most starts there in the SK, and also has 2 wins. Other folks that have SK wins there are Jeffrey Harden and the Double Deuce Bruce Pearson, who is going to be on the show next week. So we look forward to having him. And then over on the late model side of things, actually, Lil Joel has the most late model starts there with Kurt Smith. I think the only former winner that's going to be expected. But, you know, I know you've got some laps at the Myrtle Beach there. What are your thoughts heading into that track?
So this is going to be embarrassing. Myrtle Beach is the one with like the big turtle things, right?
Yep, that's it. And kind of got the dog leg, you know, one stretch, kind of a dog leg through the front stretch there. And
Yeah, that shows how much like pavement knowledge I have. Like I always have to message John and say, "What track is that again? I don't remember that track. What's that one like?" And he fills me in. But I think I usually do all right there. You definitely have to be careful with those turtles coming off of 2, I believe it is. And my mind tells me, and you can certainly tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like coming off of 4 there, especially in the late model, can get tricky on throttle. But that's kind of every track right now with this late model, the late model stock. So we'll see. You know, especially in the SK, I'll be starting in the back again. You know, that's the penalty for winning, but it makes it exciting.
hasn't stopped you the last 3 weeks, that's for sure.
Dumb luck. I mean, let's be honest. I don't know
Well,
what I'm doing.
well,
I can drive that car hard, and I just push it and push it. It's got so much tire. I just keep going.
you know, I'll be starting back there with you in that SK race, so hopefully you can talk me off the ledge of any retaliation. So,
I'll just make sure I follow you, I guess.
yeah,
I think it'll be good though.
Yeah, absolutely. And that track, you know, the thing too about that track is depending on weather conditions, a second lane can open up there, especially over in 1 and 2. And it is a uniquely shaped track, like I said, with that dog leg there. Um, you know, I think that folks that will tune in will actually get to see some pretty good racing. Anytime that we go to a track where drivers have options, whether it might be even diming in the corner where some guys are doing that, some guys are going straight. I think always provides a little bit of racing, and we're going to get a break from, you know, 1 and 2 you carry a lot of speed through the center of the corner, but 3 and 4 you do have to kind of back it down a little bit, and it seems like the tracks that you've got to back down in the corner are more passer friendly tracks than when you're kind of on a razor's edge, kind of like what Nashville was. You've got to kind of root and gouge to get that nose in there at Nashville, or even the previous week at Kern. But I do think that we're going to see a little bit more side by side racing here this week.
Oh, I sure hope so. I mean, and that's what, you know, people, if there's people that don't drive the SK that happen to catch this, I mean, what you don't understand is that the SK is a little underpowered. We're on a fixed setup and we've got a lot of tire. So getting by people is very, very difficult. I mean, you've all got the same thing and you just don't have the horsepower to, you know, everybody can put their foot down and get off the corners well. And it's so hard to pass, which probably leads to some extracurriculars like what we had. But that's, you know, you've got to get it to that limit to really make it racy and try to make something happen other than just following each other around. And you know, we don't want to crash people, but we want to make it exciting at times too. So you got to push it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you know, the part too that, and I've touched on this in other episodes too about, you know, last Saturday night was a great example. Saturday, I came into practice in the SK, and I think I was like 12th on the practice sheet, which sounds like, oh gosh, you're way down. Then I went up and I looked at the times. I was like less than a tenth off the quick time. And when you're that close together, and basically a blink of an eye separates each position, um, passing. Oh my gosh, that just makes passing
Oh,
so freaking hard.
absolutely. All you can do is sit and wait for the mistake half the time.
Yep. Or sometimes you've got to encourage that mistake, I guess would be the
Yeah,
word for
I
it.
mean, yeah, you've got to
Like
race close
peekaboo in
and
the
put
mirror.
pressure on
Yep.
people, and
Yep.
you know what that leads to is something that you may not even notice on the broadcast. You know, people may not see on the broadcast, or even if they're just not really closely watching the replay, like a millisecond of somebody letting up on the throttle or cutting down the track can make you get into them because you're right on their bumper,
Yep.
and things just happen fast.
Yep. Yep. Well, man, I will. I want to thank you one last time. There, we kind of covered Myrtle Beach here, so make sure you tune in Saturday night for all the action there at Myrtle Beach, and we'll see you next week. Like I said, next week's guest will be Bruce Pearson. So, Stephen, once again, thank you so much for coming on here again, and hopefully we get to talk to you again.
Yeah, sounds good. Maybe we can get some better internet, get my camera working, and we can talk about the real race cars a little bit too.
Absolutely, 100%, man. Well, you take care, and I'll see you guys next week.